We are following developing news this morning on the Russia-Ukraine peace talks that were supposed to be happening in Istanbul. But it's tough to talk when the two sides won't be there. Let's bring in a live shot of the situation this morning. So this is where these talks were supposed to take place. What's happening next, we're not sure. The Kremlin is confirming that Vladimir Putin will not be coming. And a reminder, this was supposed to be the first direct talks since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Well, here's how that news is being received.
Ukraine is ready to commit to a ceasefire and immediate negotiations. That's absolutely clear. The ball is now clearly in Russia's court.
That was NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte saying the ball is in Russia's court. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has responded saying Putin is the only Russian representative that he's willing to speak to. Meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will travel to Istanbul on Friday only if there's progress on the talks. So for more on this developing situation, we're joined this morning by George Beebe. He's a director of grand strategy at the Quincy Institute and former CIA director for Russian analysis. He's in Hendron, Virginia this morning. I'm so glad to have you here as this is developing. Untangle this for us. What message, first of all, is Putin sending, and to whom by not attending?
Well, I think both sides have gotten the message from Donald Trump that he insists they talk. Now the fight is over. What are they going to talk about and under what conditions? And each side, I think, is trying to force the other to talk about its preferred agenda. The Ukrainians want to talk about a ceasefire, and that's all they want to talk about right now because they're under great military pressure on the battlefield. They're losing this war. They need a breathing spell to recover, to regroup, to rearm, and to be able to defend themselves more effectively. That's what they want to talk about. The Russians want to talk about the outlines of a broad political settlement. They want to pick up where the two sides left off in April 2022 when they met in Istanbul under Turkish mediation. And they made a fair amount of progress toward a framework for settling this war and all the various political issues that are attended by it. That's why Putin chose to select Istanbul as the place to talk. And the delegation that he sent to Istanbul is the same one, led by the same person, that was negotiating with Ukraine in April of 2022. So the Ukrainians are trying to say, well, the Russians won't talk about a ceasefire, Putin won't come, that proves they're not serious. And the Russians are saying, wait a minute, we're serious. We want to talk about ending this war. Why aren't you, Ukraine, attending these talks? So that's what's going on.
So I guess the ultimate question is then, will there be any talks today?
Well, it's still not clear. I think part of this is going to depend on the messages that the Trump administration sends to the two sides. It's clear that Trump wants them to talk. Question is he going to lean on the Ukrainians to engage with the Russian delegation at a lower level, not at the presidential level? And it's important to understand that it's very unusual for presidents to engage directly with one another at such an early stage of negotiations. They typically come in toward the end to resolve the stickiest, most difficult issues in a negotiation. So the Ukrainians are asking for something that is really a departure from standard diplomatic practice.
Yeah, and to underscore that, I think the last time these two leaders were face-to-face was back in 2019. Let's bring in the U.S. to this conversation. President Donald Trump has said and agreed to, went on a call reportedly with European leaders a little later last week. He said sanctions will be coming if Russia does not comply with a 30-day ceasefire. I want to play for everybody what United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say about the developments this morning.
There is no military solution to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This war is going to end not through a military solution, but through a diplomatic one.
So does a diplomatic one include sanctions? What does it include, and where does the war likely go from here?
Well, I doubt that it will include sanctions because the West, the United States and Europe, have pretty much tried everything that's feasible. The one thing they really haven't done is impose so-called secondary sanctions on other countries that are purchasing products and selling products to Russia. Now, if we were to do that, that would inevitably entangle countries like Turkey and India and China in those sanctions. And obviously, that would be a great disruption reaction to the kinds of negotiations that the Trump administration is right now conducting with China over tariff reductions. So my guess is that if there's pressure on Russia, it's not likely going to come from American secondary sanctions on Russia and its customers and supporters. What is likely to happen is the United States could threaten to walk away from these talks, and that would be bad for both Russia and Ukraine, depending on the way it's done. It would close the door to broader rapprochement between the United States and Russia. That would be of concern to the Kremlin. They have an opportunity here. They want to seize it. But if the United States were to cut off aid to Ukraine, particularly intelligence aid, the Ukrainians would be in a very, very difficult situation on the battlefield, and the likelihood that their lines could collapse would go up enormously.
Well, as we have been reporting all morning long, this is a developing situation. George Beebe, Director of Grand Strategy at the Quincy Institute and former CIA Director for Russia Analysis, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.